So the first thing, like, I don't know why, but it's never stuck out to me before that. When I tried to ask Carolyn on that date, what was I going to do? Take her back to my tent? Be like, check this fucking sweet tent out, babe, Like, it smelled in there. I had a cot. It was a pretty sweet fucking cot.
You can't do anything on a cot.
I don't know. You can do a lot with a cot.
23 years old, dude.
There you go. So I'm John. I'm an addict. So when I do these, I try to get vulnerable and being as honest as I can about my experiences. I do believe fully I was born an addict. I just know that looking back on my behavior. I don't think I was nurtured into an addict at all, because the first time I got hold of any mind-altering substances, like a cigarette when I was 7, I caught a buzz. And I didn't do it to escape the rigors of 7-year-old life. I did it because my friend's older brother, who I thought was cool, said, smoke this, you'll catch a buzz. In the moment I caught that buzz, like, that's all I wanted to experience in life. Any of it. Like, I felt comfortable in my skin. I didn't hate myself. I was cool to my friend's older brother. I didn't want to feel any different. It was just a damn cigarette, So I came into these rooms, one of those mentally and emotionally disturbed individuals that talks about and how it works. Everybody who comes into these rooms, I do think to an extent, is emotionally and mentally disturbed. Kind of have to be to go through the things we do, but if you remember me when I came in, there was a little something extra there. And highlight the word emotionally by that disturbed, because I was a twisted emotional individual. I survived my childhood. I was born an addict. None of what I'm about to say turned me into an addict. But I think it's important to mention because it's going to do a better job of highlighting what my experience with intimacy and sex was going to be like with partners later on. When I was about 4 years old, 4 or 5, some of this is fuzzy, we had a babysitter, a very nice motherly woman. Who was very kind and gentle. I loved it when she came over, but she would give me Laffy Taffy to gratify her sexually. I had the vague sense that something about it wasn't right? It's kind of uncomfortable doing it or whatever, but I liked Laffy Taffy, you know what I mean? So that was my first experience with anything like that. And see, growing up, I thought this stuff was normal, right? I just kept it in my back pocket. I figured everybody went through little shit like that, right? That wasn't weird. So when I was about 5 or 6, my brother began raping me. And I got a hold of my medical records when I went to go into Job Corps, and I used to have these fragmented memories of it, right? I'd have these weird memories of before, then this gap, then just this sense of awfulness afterwards. So growing up, I always kind of knew it happened, but when I got a hold of my medical records, the doctor continually asked my mother if somebody was sexually assaulting me, and she continued to say no. And then it got to a point where he told her, if he comes in here like this one more time, I'm going to have to call the police and CPS. And so my mother's response to that, and I remember this very clearly, was to teach me how to go to my happy place, right? She essentially taught me how to dissociate so that I wouldn't struggle with my brother, so the obvious visible signs of abuse wouldn't be on me, bruises, scratches, nobody would have any questions. Continuing on, and I don't mean to make this sound like a book report, I just want to get to the good stuff, right? So this was my childhood. Again, I thought this stuff was normal. We had a very violent, chaotic, neglectful family. I have 3 other siblings, an older brother, an older sister, and a twin sister. My twin sister and I were enmeshed. We were more intimately close than siblings could be. There's no sex or anything like that, but there was kind of an emotional, intimate relationship there. She took care of me when my brother began assaulting me. I stopped tying my shoes, talking, eating, anything like that, so she would take care of that stuff for me. I would kill somebody for my sister. We'd get in these huge fights, though, my family, when my parents were gone. And I don't just mean normal sibling fights. I mean, I once beat the hell out of my sister with a pitching wedge. My brother would come at us with knives. We'd break chairs, bottles, all sorts of stuff. Like really violent stuff went on in that house. And one time we got in a particularly bad fight when I was about 9 years old. My twin sister hit me in the head with like this Batmobile matchbox, like really sharp fin on it, and it cracked my head open, so I was bleeding everywhere, and she freaked out. And when she freaked out, I kind of snapped too. I went upstairs, I cleaned myself up, and I came back downstairs, and I could hear my sisters out in the garage. And the tone my older sister had didn't sound right, so I kind of rushed to open the garage door to see what was happening. And as I opened the door, I watched my older sister kick a chair out from under my twin, and she hung there from a rope. I still remember watching her struggle for air, her feet kicking around, trying to find land, anything she could. And I remember the way she looked when she stopped struggling. And it's surreal when you see someone's life leave their body like that. It's just weird. I can't even describe it. My sister and I weren't strong enough to get her back up on the chair, but luckily my brother was there, and she lived. He had to do CPR. My parents' response to that was to throw a turtleneck on my sister, and she wasn't allowed to go back to school until she got her voice back, and that took a few months. A big, nasty bruise on her neck. And again, this was normal. I lived my whole life just thinking this kind of stuff was normal, right? I didn't think twice about it. When I was about 11 years old, I only had one friend. I could not make friends. I didn't fit in. I knew I was different than everybody. I'd been lonely since my earliest memory. So this friend I had was really important to me because he was my only outlet, right? And one day they got a swimming pool, one of those above ground swimming pools. And his mom, when I'd come over there, she used to read us the riot act, line us up like we were in the military and say, all right, don't do this shit, don't do that shit, do this, right? Then she'd go upstairs and smoke crack the entire night. So we got the swimming pool, and my friend's brother yanks down my swim trunks trying to be a funny guy, right? And I get super pissed off. And I start screaming. I try to chase him, and she grabs me by my collar and yanks me into the house. And she threatens to send me home and tell my parents, and I'll never be allowed over there again. And above, I don't want to be home. I do not want to be home. And I don't want my parents to know because my dad will beat the shit out of me. And so I beg her, I'll do anything. Just don't send me back home. And she coerced me into having sex with her. And that was something that continued for months until we just finally moved. And again, I thought this stuff was normal. But I did have this tremendous feeling of guilt and shame involved with it. There were a lot of mixed emotions. I'd already hit puberty, so I kind of had an idea of what was going on. But I was also terrified because she told me, A, if her son finds out I'm gone, B, if her boyfriend finds out, he'll kill me. So that's how I'm living at age 11, and finally we move. So I turned 12 over the summer when we moved, and again, I don't make any friends. I can't make any friends. I'm the weird, fucked up kid over in the corner who doesn't want to talk to people, who people spit on and just treat like shit. But there was one girl I remember on the bus. She was treating me very nicely. She was about 16 or 17, maybe 18, I can't remember. But she was really nice, and so she invited me over to her house. We hung out, and we began a sexual relationship. This was more consensual, but I'm 12 years old, and she's 17. It turned out she was actually grooming me for a 24-year-old boyfriend of hers. And so stuff like this continues through my adolescence. There are more experiences with adults and things like that, but I don't need to go into it. You get the idea. So my relationship with intimacy and sex, my view on that was completely twisted and fucked up, and that seeped into every single one of my relationships, every single one of them. So I started using when I was 9 to flashback after my sister was hung. I remember my mom used to keep my Ritalin on the counter behind the sink, and we'd get home from the doctor or something. She'd go to her room and drink wine, and I would just go downstairs. But one night I decided, fuck it, I'm going to see what 5 or 6 of these things will do to me. And I take a small handful of them, and I stayed up for 3 or 4 days. But the feeling I got was incredible. I didn't feel alone anymore, right? I didn't hate myself. I didn't have any room to think about what my life was because my life was fucked up. I could just lay back and enjoy the high. I didn't take many sober breaths from that point on. I was always substituting one thing for another. When somebody would get worried enough for me to stop, or something would get in my way, or I'd tear my life down with one substance, I'd substitute it for another one, and I think I was doing good. Because just Adderall's what ruined my life, right? The oxys, no, I'm mellow on that. That'll be good, right? That'll be good. And alcohol, every time I decided I'm not going to get high anymore, alcohol was my best friend. So constantly just fucked up my entire childhood and adolescence. And it got to a point where I was about 15, where like it says in the book, it ceased to be a luxury and became a necessity really early in life. I hit a lot of bottoms when I was a teenager, but I couldn't figure out how to not get loaded. if there was sufficient force from my parents or someone who worried about me, like I said, I could stop what I was using and switch to another for a little bit, but it was never enough to keep me stopped. I was always off and running again. I met a girl and we got married, and I'm still getting loaded, but there was like a 6-year stretch where I had my family convinced I wasn't using at all because the normal symptoms of my drug abuse weren't there. I had a job, I had a car, I had money in the bank, right? Getting loaded was just normal for me. I could you know how we get, I could twist the bubble for like an hour, then eat a sandwich and take a nap. So I didn't look high, right? And I found ways to squirrel around it and stay under the radar, but above all else, nobody could find out. I had to keep that secret. Nobody could find out. And, it made for a very lonely 5 or 6 years, and I never knew how to identify any of my feelings, so I couldn't express them to anybody, right? I didn't really have an opportunity to reach out to anybody to get any help, and I didn't think I needed help. I thought I could figure this thing out, right? There were points in my life where I was somewhat successful, and when I'd get fucked off again, I'd think back to those points, and it's almost like I went to a whiteboard and started writing on, okay, that didn't work, okay, what got me there? How can I get back to there? And I didn't realize the reason I could never get my life right is because my life was never right to begin with, right? Drugs couldn't be a part of the equation, and I just didn't see that. Things just progress and they get worse and worse. And look, I don't deserve to be sitting here right now. I don't. I've hurt a lot of people. I have robbed people of an opportunity to experience life. Not that I've killed anybody, but there are things I won't share about in an open meeting that I've been involved with. Really nasty things that I don't talk about in these meetings. I have hurt people very badly. I do not deserve to be sitting here, okay? I've been given grace. That's why I'm here. That's one of the reasons I have such a passion for helping other people, because I have to give this thing back. But things kept progressing in my addiction, and eventually there came a point when I had to come out to my wife, because we were making 6 figures a year, both of us, working at this place. And I couldn't afford to pay the mortgage on time. And so she was going to figure some shit out. So through a course of events, I broke down. I told her I needed help, and I went to treatment. And this woman, codependently, mind you, but gave way too much of herself to try to keep me well and make me okay, right? She loved me to death. I loved her too. There was no real joy. I couldn't experience it, but I felt the closest thing to love I could for this woman, and she would do anything to help me. And so I went to treatment, and I spent most of my life alone. That's how I got loaded. I didn't want people around. People didn't want me around. I wasn't allowed at the trap house because, hey, man, I rinse your bubble? Okay, man, we've already done that. I would scrape and fucking rinse your equipment until it broke. Fucking, hey, man, can I get that cotton? We've already used it twice. As that guy, nobody liked me around. But so I spent most of my time alone. But in treatment, I finally met my people, and I met what the book calls the exciting new girl who understands, right? She was this, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. She was this pretty, loving, compassionate woman, and I left treatment with her and divorced my wife. I tore my entire life apart, and I ripped her to shreds. She's one of my best friends now. I'm grateful for that. She's one of the most important people in my life, and I'm grateful to have a partner like Carolynn. Carolynn. Wow. Shit. Who understands that, though, right? I didn't have to have that discussion. Carolynn loves Sarah just as much as I do. But this woman, this exciting new girl who understands, this loving, caring, pretty woman, about 2 weeks out of treatment became unpretty, unloving, and uncaring, and we were on a sick one. And that relationship was really abusive. She was physically, emotionally, and just mentally abusive. I withstood so much crap from her because I knew if that relationship didn't work, I'd have to face the fact that I tore my entire life down. And up to the point I met her, I'd never used a needle. Right, I could afford pills, and so pills and meth is what I'd do. I'd smoke it. I'd never shoot up. And when I met her, I started using needles, and I got bad really fast, like we do when we find fucking needles, right? Eventually, I moved up here to get away from her. My brother happened to live up here. I was working a construction job on the Swinomish Casino. I was doing the plumbing when that expansion happened. So my brother gave me a place to crash. I didn't get connected with anything up here. I ended up in detox a few times. there was always a girl every opportunity I had, because if you take substances away from me, which are my solution, and I don't have a sufficient substitute, I will find the first thing I can latch on to, and women are just as big a symptom of my addiction as any drug or gambling is, because I latch onto them right away. So last time I went to detox, though, this girl walks in and she's covered in tattoos. Up one arm and down the other are names of men that are crossed out. And I remember my first thought was, wonder how I can get my name crossed out on her arms, you know what I mean? So I never took this thing seriously, right? I didn't really think I had a drug problem. I thought I could put them down. I knew my problems were emotional in nature. I knew I was fucked up. I didn't want to live. I couldn't face another day, and I hated myself, and I wanted to get out of that hell, but I couldn't find a way out of it. I wound up back in treatment. It was a men's facility, so there was no opportunity to find a woman there, which kind of pissed me off, because I was lied to. My sister-in-law told me, oh, it's co-ed, you'll be fine. And I got there, and it's just a bunch of fucking dudes, which fucking sucked. Yeah. But I didn't take that seriously either. I just sat in a corner and moped about it, right? And I'd get out and I'd get loaded again promptly. Eventually I found Cocaine Anonymous, right? And a woman in Cocaine Anonymous. And so again, I'm not taking it seriously. I'm involved in this relationship. Early on, I think because this woman has worked her steps, she's some kind of fucking goddess who can never do any wrong. And we're sick people when we come into these rooms. She was sick, I was sick. That relationship ended, and because I hadn't worked any steps, I hadn't taken anything seriously, I went out and I got loaded again. There was nothing in place to stop me this time. There was no job, there was no worried mother, there was no partner to get in my way and say I needed to stop. So I went till the brakes fell off. I found myself back down in Puyallup with that first girl I left treatment with, crying in a motel bathroom, trying to hit a vein in my neck for like 16 minutes. And all I could think is, how the fuck did I get here again? I don't want to be here. Like, why can't I find a way out? I woke up in the hospital, I don't know how many hours later, and I was on suicide watch. And they let me out of the hospital. And I remember it was winter, and I was cold, and I was alone, and I was walking through town, and this thought came to me, like, you're going to fucking die down here. And it spooked me, because it wasn't, like, when I think, I hear my own voice when they're my thoughts, but this was a different voice. Right, this came from somewhere else. You're going to die down here unless you take this thing seriously. Like, this is your last opportunity. So I took it seriously. I reached out to my ex-wife. She gave me money to get back up here. On March 9th, 2019, that's my clean date, and that's the day I came back up here. I haven't gotten loaded since. The obsession was removed from me pretty quickly. Somebody snuck me in the back door of the Friendship House, and I spent about 6 days sleeping through the day. I'd wake up once a day to take a piss and go outside and smoke and confuse the fuck out of everyone, because no one knew who the hell I was. Just the guy who would wander down and smoke once a day. But I know the obsession was removed, because those first few months, people were like practically throwing their dope at me. People I didn't know were offering to get me loaded for some reason. And I'm thinking, where were you 2 months ago, right? Like, fuck, I could have used you then. Nobody wanted to give me dope. But this fucker comes up when I'm clean. But for the first time in my life, there was no anxiety around the question. Anytime I would try to stop using a substance, when the idea would come up that I might get loaded on it, I might use it, I'd tell myself no. And then I'd think, well, maybe I do. And I'd go back and forth like that in my head until the anxiety got so great that the only solution I had for that was to get loaded and worry about it later. Fuck it, I'm just going to get high. I'll worry about this shit later. But that wasn't present this time. It just wasn't there. I had no thought of getting loaded. So I hit an emotional and spiritual bottom about 3 months, clean and sober, living in my tent alone. I wasn't taking any suggestions. The one suggestion I did take was find somebody who you can relate to and ask them to sponsor you. And those sponsors didn't work out. I found people who I thought had what I wanted, and they didn't work out. They just didn't. Maybe it wasn't their time, maybe it was me, I don't know, but they didn't work out. And so finally in my tent one night, I'm talking to my ex-wife, and I say some fucked up shit that finally she just says, you know what, don't call me. And she hangs up the phone. And for the first time in my life, that loneliness I've carried with me is fucking 100% real. Because now I have nobody. And I start bawling my eyes out. And even though I'm not taking suggestions, I'm not taking things seriously, I've been in enough meetings to know, ask God for help. You can't do this. You need to surrender to God. And so I surrendered. And it wasn't a peaceful, tranquil surrender. It was something more like, if you think you can do a better fucking job, do it. That's literally what I said. And a couple of days later, I found the guy who took me through the big book. See, when I said mentally and emotionally disturbed, when I first came back into these rooms, if you saw me walking down the street, because like Carolyn said, I walked a lot to get where I needed to go, you'd usually see me screaming at somebody that wasn't there. I was that guy. Thing is, I didn't think there was someone there I was talking to. I was reliving all this fucked up emotional shit I had been through, and I was trying to vent it out. But anytime I'd have to speak to somebody about something that was sensitive or something I had locked away in here, I'd start screaming. So people didn't know what to do with me at meetings. You know, there's a gentleman that's been showing up to these meetings lately that is a little out of it, right? That people don't know what to do with. And I look at that guy and that's me. That's fucking me, you know? He deserves a chance to be in these rooms, right? I was given an opportunity. But people didn't talk to me, right? Partly because they didn't know how I was going to act, partly because the shit I said in meetings was toxic. And that woman who things didn't work out with in Cocaine Anonymous, I'd spit venom at her in meetings. I'd spend my time just bitching about her, spewing just nasty shit. So I was toxic on top of it, so people didn't want to talk to me. But there was one person, and after I surrendered, I remembered there was one person who was always at the door of a meeting, always looked me right in the eyes and said, "Hey, John, it's good to see you." He knew my fucking name, he made eye contact with me, and he shook my hand. And that's the man I asked to sponsor me. He was the one and only person I thought I could reach out to. And it's funny, when I got my year, he told me the truth of the situation is when I asked him to sponsor me, he was like, "Fuck." And I get it. I understand why. But what happened is I walked up to him outside a meeting. I was like, "Hey, man, can we talk? Can we go somewhere and talk?" And he said, "Okay." And he went in and he told his wife and we went for a walk. But I'm pretty sure now what he did is he said, "Hey, I'm going on a walk with this fucking crazy guy. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, come looking for me." You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure he'd confirm that. But we got serious. I told him things weren't working with my sponsor, and he's the one who actually offered. I was just looking for someone to bitch about my life to. And he's the one who actually offered to sponsor me. And so when things didn't work out with that sponsor, I got stood up again. I went to him and he said, "Let's get to work." But like I said, I was like an emotional bomb. Anytime something would come up that I was sensitive about, I'd start screaming. And I don't mean like, I'd be speaking, but my words would come out like this. I couldn't control it. And we had conversations sometimes where he's like, "Look, dude, do you want help or are you just trying to fucking get mad or what?" And I'd beg him not to leave. I'd say, like, "I know I'm fucking screaming at you, but I'm not trying to scream. I can't fucking control it." And he didn't take off. He put up with it and he worked with me because he needed to give this thing back. So we started meeting up. Like Carolyn said, I would go to any length to meet the guy. And I don't know if I was willing, but I know I was desperate. I did not want to feel the way I had anymore. Okay, I was tired of praying every night that I wouldn't wake up and then waking up the next day crying because I don't know if I can fucking keep doing this. I can't fucking keep doing this, right? What's the point of it all? You know, I've never felt the way I wanted to. Nobody fucking gives a shit about me. What the fuck's the point, right? In the course of working my steps with this guy, we got to my third step, and I talk about it a lot because it's really big. It's really fucking important to me. Like Carolyn said, I have a good relationship with God, and it's because God came into my life when I did my third step prayer. My sponsor pointed out that just under the prayer in the book, it says the wording is quite optional. And he said, "I want you to memorize." He said he suggested. I don't remember him suggesting anything. I remember being told what to do, but I fucking listened. He said, "Memorize the prayer. I want you to memorize it so that if I stop you anywhere, no matter what you're doing, you can recite the prayer to me. Then when you have that memorized, I want you to spend some time thinking about it and write it in a way a God personal to you would understand." And so I did that. Took the week, memorized the prayer, I rewrote it, and he told me, "Go find a place that you can be peaceful, and I want you to recite that prayer. And meet with me, and we'll go on to your fourth step." And I went out to this little quiet spot by the river, kind of near the disc golf course, but it's it's tucked away. There's these nice little rocks, and there's some trees, and it's near the river, and it's pretty. And but what happened when I said that prayer, it changed me forever. I finished saying the prayer, and I remember this feeling of warmth, and I felt a smile across my lips, and I felt happy for probably the first time I can fucking remember. And the big thing is I didn't feel alone anymore. Like, I know for a fact when I did that prayer, the sunlight of the Spirit entered me. And the reason it's so big to me is it talks about it in the book. I became a completely different person. It says in chapter 2, exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. I sat down, that emotionally twisted, toxic, fucked off person, and I stood up resembling more the person I am today. The pain I carried, the loneliness, the resentment, it all stayed there on that rock. I was a completely different person. I had a spiritual awakening and a psychic change like that. And I don't think that's anything special. I don't think I'm unique for that. I just think that's how it had to happen. If it didn't happen like that, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. God is a big part of my program. Yeah, we mean it when we say you can't do this without God. The life I live today is... Look, things get fucked up, right? Shit happens. I feel pain. I feel depression. Sometimes I feel imposter syndrome. Sometimes I have a hard time sitting in meetings and still feeling like I'm connecting with people. But no matter what, I haven't had a single bad day. And that's because I don't allow myself to have a bad day. I have bad moments. I have really fucked up moments, but I don't let them carry throughout the rest of my day. And it's because I've been given perspective. Right? That's one of the biggest things I've gained is just perspective relative to crying in a motel bathroom, trying to hit my neck for 15 minutes. No matter what's happening right now, I'm doing pretty fucking good. I don't know. I came into these rooms completely and utterly hopeless, beyond fucking human aid. And what I've been given, I can't put into strong enough words because there just aren't words to describe what's happened for me. I have a tremendous gratitude for not only the people that were here before me, because if those doors weren't open, I wouldn't be here. That's why we have meetings. It says in the book, we meet regularly so that the newcomer may find the fellowship they seek. That's why we have these meetings. And I wouldn't be here without those who came before me. But I have even more gratitude for the people who come up to me and ask me for help. I have a way out, right? And I want to give that to people. We shouldn't have to live the lives we live. We shouldn't have to feel the way we do out there, and we shouldn't have to die ugly, miserable, and alone. But we fucking do. One of the things I like about this meeting is it's fun. During the readings, there's call and response. It's loud in here at break. People are having fun. But the one thing that sticks out to me is it says in the big book, just underneath that lies a deadly earnestness. And I love that word earnest. It means to do something with an honest and intense conviction. Intense and conviction are two strong words, and it's preceded by deadly. That means you have to be serious as a fucking heart attack. And I don't forget that. I still remember how I felt. I have a sense of purpose today, and it's trying to help others. For someone like me, who's hated himself his entire life, who can never do anything right, to have people coming up to me and ask me for help just blows my fucking mind. I love this program. I wouldn't have my life today without it. And I don't know, I just have tremendous gratitude. And I try to remember that the steps taught me how to manage what used to be unmanageable. They didn't just bring God into my life. I have a solution for every problem that comes. I can open that book, and because I've been shown in a practical way how to apply those steps to problems, usually starts with step 1, shit's unmanageable, right? And I can work through it until I get it figured out. Because I've been shown that, I've also organized and structured my week in a way where I'm either chairing a meeting with a sponsee, or sitting down with my sponsor. Like, my week is full of that shit because I already know if I stop doing any one of the things I'm doing today, the insanity is going to return. And the first people who are going to be affected are my loved ones. Dope has never become an option, no matter how bad things got, but I don't want to find out when it does. And so I try to remember one of my favorite lines in the book. It says something like, nothing but continuous action upon the principles of this program as a way of life will bring about the much desired result. And when I came in, I thought the desired result was staying clean. But I know today that the desired result is the joy of living. And that's something I have today, and I never had it before. So there aren't many people left in here, but if you're sitting in here, man, and you're carrying something with you, you're fucking heartbroken, you felt lonely, or you've never felt the way you wanted to, ask somebody in this room to help you. We have a fucking way out. You don't have to live like that anymore. So that's all I got, guys.